Hi, Ben.
Hello, Stuart. How are we?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. Seems like a long time since Greenhead in March. Can't
June,
remember.
oh, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
March. Oh, it's been a while,
it's
hasn't it?
been a while. Yeah. Right. So I
Yeah,
just
shall
need
we?
to screen share,
Wonderful. You should
and
be able to. Um, shall we just crack on and shall I let them in then?
that'll be brilliant. Yeah, I'm just clicking to set a few things up, but we're good.
Wonderful. I think I can set it so that everyone in the chat can see each other's. Are we happy with that? It's just easier than the Q&A.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And I'm using Menti as well, so some of the answers will come through that. You'll see it as it goes, but I think we can encourage
Amazing.
everyone to use both. And
There's
yeah,
also, if you want me to encourage it, there's also a way that we can actually let individual participants talk. I think with a massive group that might be a bit clunky, but if you fancy at any point, then that is an option, I think. So
if let's see how it goes. But
yeah, absolutely.
it's an option. Yeah, it's always just obviously controlling what's said. But
Exactly. Yeah, fair enough. Wonderful. Cool. So I'll let people in. So we'll kick off.
lovely job.
Let's get this started. Yeah, fantastic. And then hopefully that number should go up. Yeah, three people. Fantastic. Okay. So hello everyone. Hello. Thank you for coming along this evening. We'll just give it a couple of seconds here before we kick things off properly, just as that participants number still tots up. Just give it two
Lovely to
seconds. But
see,
yeah.
isn't it? Lovely to see it
Sorry.
flying up.
Oh, it's fantastic. I was going to say I think this is one of our bigger ones. Fantastic. Although not as big as medicine, which you've just come off
I
the
didn't
back of.
I didn't look at numbers. Yeah, I didn't look at numbers, so I don't know. But that's great.
Oh, I think we had like over we God, I think we had like between 100 and 150 signed up for medicine. So
I'm
that was a
flattered.
big one. Yes, absolutely. All for you. All for you.
It was your guy that was the star. Your current student was absolutely brilliant. So it's yeah, I'll take what credit I can.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I think that number's starting to stabilize a little bit here. So, hello everyone. Thanks for coming along this evening to the Brasenose slash Selwyn slash Catz Cambridge online interview session for biological sciences, biology, that sort of stuff. And I think we've also biological natural sciences as well, which is definitely Stuart for Cambridge. That's definitely your expertise.
Sure.
But for Oxford, biology. And yes, this is an Oxbridge interview session. We have both of us, both Oxford and Cambridge, represented today. So I'll just introduce myself. So my name's Ben, for those of you who don't know me. Hopefully, some of you in the chat, I've come to your schools before. So hopefully some of you might recognize me. But for those who don't, my name's Ben. I work at Brasenose College. I'm the Outreach and School Liaison Coordinator, which is just a fancy title for I do school visits and try to encourage people to apply to Oxford and Cambridge. I was a student myself at Oxford. I did experimental psychology. So not a million miles away from biology, and I think Stuart might pick on me a couple of times as a student helper. Not sure. We'll see what he's feeling there. But yes, I am also joined today by my esteemed colleague. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Stuart Eves. I'm a vet at Cambridge, so I study veterinary medicine, but I teach across all the biological subjects really. So what we call biological natural sciences, veterinary and medicine. I'm also probably most importantly for you guys, I'm admissions tutor at Selwyn for those subjects, which means I kind of have overall say on aspects of well, admissions and things. So hopefully a good person to have. I'm a veteran of a large number of interviews, both being interviewed, but mostly obviously being the interviewer. So hopefully I'm well positioned to help you out.
Fantastic. Yeah. So this is an interview session, so we'll be focusing on the interview part of the admission cycle. Obviously, there are other parts as well. Hopefully, you've all sent off your UCAS forms either now or very shortly. And most of you will probably have some sort of admissions test that's coming up soon. So make sure you're doing some past papers for that. That's basically all the advice we can give. Although I say that I don't think biology Oxford has admissions test. So some of you guys might be some of the lucky few scientists who don't have to say an extra paper. So I'll just do a very quick few words on interviews generally, and then we'll hand over to Stuart, who'll handle the bulk of this session as the expert here. So this is actually quite a good approximation, because I'm sure you're aware most interviews across Oxbridge are going to be online. So all of the Oxford ones, all of those are online. Most of Cambridge, except for 6 colleges, and I believe Selwyn is one of those 6, isn't it?
We are indeed. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So the 6 colleges at Cambridge, including Selwyn, that will be in person. It'll be basically the exact same, just face to face rather than on a screen. But this is almost exactly what it will look like. So you'll go in, there'll be 2 people there. They'll ask you some questions. One of them might talk while the other writes some notes. Don't try to think into what they're writing down. They're not writing comments about you. They're just writing what you're saying. Because at the end of the day, when you've done 12 back to back and all the faces and names blur together, it's good to remember who did what. And then there's a lot of, I think, stereotypes out there about what the interviews are. So they're not like job interviews. We won't ask you to describe yourself in 60 seconds, or at least I don't think so. Maybe Stuart, that is something you've asked before. No, fantastic. It'll just be a discussion about your subject, and we just want to see your thought process. So the big advice I always give, just think out loud, verbalize the whole thought process, because if you're going wrong in a question, you might be going wrong in an interesting way or for an understandable reason. And if you're going wrong, but you're saying what you're doing, the tutors can point you in the right direction. If you're going wrong in silence and then 5 minutes of sitting there, you just blurt something out, that's not really helpful to anyone. So just think of it as a discussion, an opportunity to have a conversation about something you're really interested in with some of the experts in the field. And then the final boring things, tech difficulties, if you're doing it online, will happen. We've all done Zoom. You will talk over each other. You will be muted at some point. Your Wi-Fi might drop out. We're not giving places based on who's got the best Wi-Fi. If something catastrophic happens, just message the administrator who would have been in contact with you, and you'll reschedule it. We don't care what you wear. You don't need to talk really formally. We don't care what your background looks like. You don't need to have loads of books in there. You don't need like a Star Wars poster or a Lost in Comet poster. You don't need to hope that, maybe the interviewer's a massive Star Wars fan and you can win them over that way. Don't care any about that. We just care about what you say. Yeah, don't need a little model brain on your desk. Cool. So unless, Stuart, there's any other general interview advice you could think of, I think that's all my patter.
Yeah, and some of that's going to come up again, which is absolutely brilliant. I'm also thrilled to say we've now hit 51 people, because I was sitting there at 49 for a while, and there's something fantastic about my OCD that was just pushing to 50. So I'm pleased.
We've broken
wonderful. Ben, please, at any time, if there's something you want to say, just get involved. That'll be absolutely lovely. But yeah, wonderful. So I'll get going with this, and you'll be able to speak to us both at the end anyway. Because hopefully we'll have loads of time for a question and answer session. So the plans for this session from me, I want to give you a bit of insight on what we actually kind of achieve by interviewing, why we do it, give you an idea of what the structure of the interview will be like, and then we're going to do a workshop of interview questions. And actually, having done this for many, many years, I've actually decided to flip it on its head over a few years, and I'm going to get you to come up with interview questions. Bear with me, but it's a really good process. It's a really good thing to put you in our position. So I hope I'm going to do you justice on that. Right, next slide, please. First thing to say is what interview or what information we can get from interviews. And this slide is really just to say to you, interviews are only part of the process. They are only part of the puzzle. So please don't think that the interview is everything, that it has to go well, that you have to think that it's gone well. Because as you can see from your UCAS application, and as you know, there are loads of different strands, and we do take all of them seriously. We've got your personal statement. We want to know what you feel about yourself in terms of doing the course, why you feel you're prepared, what experiences you've had which lead to that. We'll get information about how you've done from your college as well, and we'll get contextual information from your school and college, which really hopefully tells us how well you've done in what we call your cohort, how well you've done in your group. We get your academic results, obviously, we'll ask for those. We're interested in which subjects you studied, because there are subject requirements. If you're thinking of doing a biological subject, but you don't have biology and you don't have chemistry, you don't have maths, it's suddenly going to become that little bit harder. You don't need them all, but obviously there are certain subjects which do say. So for example, for natural sciences here, on the biological side, we want to make sure that you've got the relevant sciences to actually kind of proceed. And we also actually ask for maths now. So it's those little things. Predicted grades and results, obviously that's important. And then any admissions tests or any admissions assessments are important. But when it boils down to it, interviews only form part of this whole process. But of course, all of them are important. So that's why we're trying to help out. So I started playing with this thing called Mentimeter that you might have come across, but what you can probably see on the left-hand side of the screen is a QR code. So if you've got your phones, if you open up your cameras and you point it at the screen at the QR code, it should give you a link. And what I want to ask you all is, what sort of information do you think we can get from an interview? So I'll give you a little bit of time. Hopefully this works. I'm always relieved when the first one appears. But what sort of information do you think we can get from an interview? The first one's in. Thank you so much. My blood pressure has now dropped. How we approach unfamiliar questions? Absolutely. That is what we'll do. We'll probably start off with a familiar, as you're about to find out, but then we'll go in a slightly different situation. That's come up again. How somebody thinks, that's the really crucial one. We're very much interested in how you think, because obviously that's something we can't get on the paper almost. You know, people tell us that they're very good at these things, but we want to make sure. How good a fit they are with the system. Yep, absolutely. Oh, shouldn't have done that. Here we go. I was trying to scroll up and that's caused me all sorts of problems. Bear with me. There we go. There we go. Let me do it on my big screen up here. That's going to be easier. How teachable a candidate is. That's a really good point. That's almost why we're interested in how people think, because we're interested in this idea of having you in a small group, the kind of supervision tutorial systems that we have, and that we can actually kind of teach and think through things. Thinking processes, problem solving, really good one. Yeah, we're interested in giving you unfamiliar problems, things that maybe you haven't thought about, and then how you can kind of build those into your answers. All of those are really very good. Let me just see if there's other. Judging how you apply the information you know rather than the content. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, brilliant. Creativity. Yeah, absolutely. Adaptability. I agree. And we'll come back to these as we go through, but that's very, very true. Interesting one here, how they work under pressure. It's true. It is true to some degree, but what I would say is that it probably comes then down to kind of nerves and what happens with nerves. And I'd assure you that we realize people are nervous. And I'd probably say that the really key thing is, don't think that you can't be nervous and that you can't show that you're nervous. I think the most important thing is that you do to some degree control it. And I know that's easier said than done, but I think sometimes people are so desperate to show that they're not nervous that almost that just it erupts in a uncontrollable bout of nerves, when actually sometimes I have people coming in going, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. And you go, don't worry about it. I've been interviewed. I've got absolutely no doubt Ben's been interviewed before.
Yeah, I was going to say, just thinking back to that, like, don't be nervous is potentially the worst advice you can ever give anyone, because no one's heard that and then magically stop being nervous. Sure. It's fine to be it, but as Stuart said, like, the tutors are good at their jobs. You go into there, you'll be nervous, and they know you're going to be nervous. They'll get you talking. It'll just be, some random patter about your day. It might be just a very innocuous question, maybe something on your personal statement that they've already read. They don't massively care about the answers too much. Potentially, they just want to get you talking. And then, like we said, they're not going to throw you something completely unknowable and then just leave you to it. They'll work through it with you. And you're nervous going into it, but 5 minutes in, they've got you talking, they've got you giving a go. I think most people, they find that like the tutors are good at relaxing them and getting them talking. And eventually I came out of them thinking they were quite fun. Didn't think that all of them went amazingly. That's also a very normal response, but I did quite enjoy them.
Yeah. And I think it's exactly that. Really good advice. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you for those. There's going to be some more of those, so stay with us. So you've come up with you've come up with all of these, but what I thought I'd do is just kind of try and divide them up a bit. And I thought what we'd do is we'd kind of have one set which was subject-based understanding, and then one set that we could think of as skills. And I see these in front of me right now. So fluency in technical language, I don't know, that may well have come up. I didn't see it, but what I would say is we're not looking. You don't have to use big words and everything else. But if you do know what something's called, don't be afraid to use it, because that just shows that you're comfortable with what you're talking about. Confidence in the material. We'd like to think that you'd be kind of, certainly at the beginning, we'd like to think you'd be confident in what you were talking about. Your level of interest, applying your knowledge, that came up an awful lot, kind of actually using it, and we'll look at that in a minute. Suitability for your course, that's quite important. But hopefully you've thought through what you want to do and you've got exactly the right course. So, yes, there's biology and things, but yeah, you do have things like psychology, and maybe that's more down your route. And that's quite important that you've chosen the right thing. In some subjects, experience can be important, but obviously if you do have relevant experience, it's still worth kind of talking about that if the opportunity comes up, if it's asked. And then there's the skills section. So your ability to explain, your ability to listen to direction. Sometimes that's where the nerds get in, but sometimes we're really trying to help you. And the key thing is you almost kind of say, look, it's okay, just think about what I'm saying. And that can be really important. Determination. I think that's a big one. If you do end up with a question that you think, okay, I'm not so sure on that, keep going. Talk out loud. Just talk us through what you're thinking. And that shows determination. It shows that you're willing to have a go. We're interested in you evaluating ideas, discussing things, problem solving. If we give you a bit of a problem, what do you think would happen here? Those kind of things. And then potentially your organisation we might be interested in. So we might be asked how you organise your time and things like this. Excellent. So I'm going to pick on that big one, which was understanding, subject-based understanding. And again, I'm going to throw this open to Menti. I just need to get get the website going. How might we test your understanding, do you think, at interview? What might we do to test your understanding? So I'll give you a few seconds, see what comes up. Another heart in mouth moment. Nothing's there.
I'm also definitely stealing Menti at some point. This is fantastic.
It's been, yeah, I love it. It's absolutely great when it works, of course. So here we go. Application questions. Yeah, absolutely. So we're very much about applying the knowledge. You'll see as we develop our questions in a minute, there are questions that are potentially just fact-based, but we're probably quite quickly going to take those into, okay, how do we apply those? Applying previous knowledge, yeah, absolutely. So applying it to new scenarios, yeah, you're all bang on the money. Ask questions beyond the specification. So yeah, we'll probably start off at the kind of GCSE and A-level specification, but it may well be that then we stretch it beyond. It's not always, if you like, harder. It's just in hopefully a different direction, something you might not have encountered before. Asking us to keep expanding on what we say. Yeah, we will. We'll also help you with it, though, I promise. We won't just keep saying, what more can you tell me? What more can you tell me? We might say, okay, I really like that answer. Great. But let's think about a slightly different challenge or something like this. So we will lead you through things. Yeah, so many of the right things. Yeah. Practical based questions. Yeah, potentially. Absolutely brilliant. Asked to talk through a graph or diagram. Somebody's already seen what I'm about to do with you, so well done. But yes, absolutely superb stuff. Brilliant. So a little bit about this, and Ben's already covered a bit of this, but yeah, for the interviews this year, the thing I would say is please check the format of the interviews. I say this as from one of the colleges that broke rank and did something a bit different, so please check. Online at all of the Oxford colleges. And of 24 of the 31 Cambridge colleges, they are doing online. There are a few colleges that have decided to go back to in-person for UK-based students. We don't think that there's any difference between the two. I know it seems strange to have somebody who's decided to do something different that says there's no real difference. it really was that we wanted to give people the opportunity to be in person if that's what they wanted. But I do not think there's any difference in the process. We've interviewed online for the last however many years. I believe both are effective. But please check the format. If you are online, what we ask is computer with video and audio, an internet connection, and then the software will be a freely available software. So I understand that for Oxford, it's Teams, I think is the general one, which you can get online. We tend to use things like Zoom, but it will be one of the freely available ones, and you will be told. So that hopefully shouldn't be a problem. Let us know if there is a problem. What we will do is send you an email link with the login details. So you'll have it all there. It will basically say click here at the allotted time, or hopefully just a bit before. But hopefully there won't be any kind of worries about how to do it. What we tend to say is we think it's desirable for you to do it from school, college, basically somewhere where you've got support. And what I mean is things like IT support. But I guess I also mean that if you can't get the connection, or if it drops off, someone that will go and make you a cup of tea and just say, don't worry, it will be fine. Because that's what we need. It's that horrible feeling that somebody might be in their room on their own at home, and then something goes wrong and they don't know what to do. So we'd urge you to do that. Hopefully they've also got more stable internet, but it depends where you're from. We do have protocols in place in case there are any technological issues. So I'm surprised how well online works. When we were hit with COVID, and we had to get on with it. It was more successful than I could have hoped. But what I would say is, if anything does go wrong, there's a bit of a problem with the internet or something else, there are protocols in place. Okay, so do not worry. It's always worth having the phone number and email address of the college there, so that if anything happens, you just think, right, I'll ring them, I'll let them know. Okay, but please do not worry, there are protocols. And then the last one basically is the or, because if you are coming in person, then obviously things are a bit different, and we'll tell you where to be and when to be. We'll give you maps and directions. There'll be helpers in place to kind of show you where you need to go. But again, if you've got any concerns, please kind of contact us. Again, things can happen. There can be travel problems. You know, it's in December, so there can be snow and things. We work with it. Okay, so please do not worry. Do your best to be on time. But don't worry if things go wrong, we can work with it. Excellent. So what I'll do is I'll show you this video. This is this is one of the Cambridge videos, but there's a lot of good advice in here. It was a pre-COVID one, but except for the details on actually just in-person interviews, the rest of this I find really good advice. So I'll just play this for you quickly, and I hope now I've got the sound working.
The Cambridge interview only forms part of our assessment of our candidates. We'll look at the whole of your application, at any tests that we may ask you to sit, and especially at your record in exams. The interview itself is intended to give us a better sense of your motivation and your aptitude for the course for which you've applied. We'll also use it to get a better sense of your ability to think analytically and critically in an academic setting. We hope that this film will give you some good tips and guidance about approaching the process and preparing for interview.
Most Cambridge interviews will take place from early to mid-December, so you should make sure that you're available to attend in case you're invited to an interview. And remember, if you are invited, then confirm your actual attendance with the college that's invited you.
I think you should remind yourself why the course you've chosen to study is right for you. Do make sure you reread your UCAS application and make sure you've done everything you've mentioned in your personal statement.
I think the really important thing to remember is that you're actually preparing to study your subject at university, and that's what we're tapping into at interview. So how you've gone beyond your school curriculum, the kinds of things you've been reading, the academic debates that you've been having, that's what we want to explore with you.
Make sure your travel arrangements are such that you arrive at least probably half an hour early. When you get here, come into the Porters Lodge, come and see the porters, they know the college and they're all very friendly and helpful.
There'll be a waiting area set up where you can wait and have a chat to current students like me. While you're waiting, it's also really important to make sure you don't pay attention to how others say their interviews went.
So on the day of my interview, I came in smart trousers, a shirt and a jumper because it was really cold. Didn't want to be shivering going into the interview or anything like that. You definitely don't have to worry about what to wear. Just don't come in anything that makes you stand out in a bad way, but just something you feel confident in, really.
The details of the actual interview can vary a little depending on the subject that you've chosen or the college that you're being interviewed at. In general, you'll get 1, 2 or 3 interviews. They'll each last 20 to 40 minutes in length, and you may be interviewed by one person, 2 people, or even 3.
Some of the things you might be asked about would include your sixth form studies, any wider reading you've done. For most subjects, work experience is of little, if any, relevance, but for vocational subjects, expect to be asked what you got out of it.
We're not interested in a kind of perfect, polished performance. It doesn't matter if you have to repeat yourself, if you have to ask us to repeat a question, or if you take time to answer a question. The important thing is that we're there to discuss you and your interest in your subject.
Make sure that you get in touch with the college with regards to support in terms of accessing the actual interview. I was given a student volunteer to help get around, and also material that I needed for the interview adapted in a suitable format. I felt that this made the whole thing less stressful because it meant I could access it just as well as my peers.
My piece of advice when it comes to interviews, be yourself and back yourself.
My top tip would be to be yourself and smile.
Above all else, remember that we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking to gauge whether you're right for the course for which you've applied.
And there we go. And I guess I will just look across Ben and say, obviously, that was an unashamedly Cambridge thing. And I don't want to think that I'm trying to steal the thunder. So certainly, is there anything to kind of add from your point of view?
No, basically, we'll forgive you for stealing the thunder there. You summed it all up. I think it evens out. The psychology interview was we were both Oxford anyway, so it's fine.
Perfect. But I think the key thing is it's the same advice. I think would go on both kind of sides. And I know again it was a kind of in-person thing, but it's the same things. If you would have potentially some issues with accessing a Zoom interview or an online interview, it's really important you speak to the college and make them aware, because there will be things that can be put in place, and that's very important. Okay, great. So how the interview works, this is what we're now going to break down. So the first thing is we're going to do obviously introductions and explanations. Then we're going to work through questions on a range of different concepts. We're probably going to go through a few different ones because we want to make sure that there might be areas where someone's well versed in it and maybe they're strong on that. But we want to make sure we give lots of varied questions so that if that's not an area of their strength, they're still going to have opportunities to go into areas that they are stronger. And then at the end, there's going to be time for your questions. Now, I'll probably say this again later, but when we usually leave a few minutes at the end for questions. But what I mean is, while it's very flattering where someone says, "Oh, I hear you're a neuroscientist, tell me about your work," that's not what we're after. What it is have you got any questions about the course, about the subject? Is there anything about the university or the college that you would like to ask us? So as I say, while it's very flattering when people ask about me, I will kind of say, look, actually, it's really, is there anything about this? But it's a good time to, if that's the case, it's a good time to. Right, so like I say, first one, introduction. So obviously enter the room, whether physically or virtually. So what you'll do is obviously you'll either be kind of outside waiting, or you'll be in a waiting room for to be called in. Obviously it's a good idea to get that just a little bit early and know where you're going. And then we'll invite you in, we'll say hello, we'll do the kind of introduction and we'll talk you through how the interview works. So we won't just go straight in and start asking you questions. We will tell you time and everything else. Then we will start doing, if you like, the questions. We will start asking you about the subject. So this is the point where we're going to make our own question. I'm going to put you in our shoes, and I am going to kind of encourage you to think about how you would structure the question. So the way I see them, and this comes from some of my teaching, I'm not only do I teach, but teaching is almost also what I research. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through 3 things. We're going to do some questions that assess the current level of knowledge. So that's a good place to start. I want to know where you are currently in your subject. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lead on to questions that test understanding. So I'm going to ask about explanation. I'm going to ask you maybe to show your process on it, show your thought process. And then finally, we're going to use questions to test your thinking skills. So we're going to think about new ideas, new challenges, problem solving. So we've got those kind of 3 levels, if you like, those 3 ranks. And then throughout, if you remember that slide we had quite early on, it talked about those kind of other skills we might be looking for, and things like technical language, let's try and use it where we can. Your fluency with the ideas and linking ideas together, problem solving abilities, kind of determination with questions, and interest. So hopefully we can show those most of the time inadvertently, kind of, but hopefully we can show them throughout. Right, so here we go. Oh, and there's just an explanation of some of them, so I'll just leave that up for a second. But, you know, technical language, speak simply, but think of the relevant terms if you can and use them. Link ideas, follow how we're guiding you. Problem solving, try and interpret new ideas and applications. Don't be scared of them. Just try and interpret them and make sense of them. Don't give up. And yeah, enjoy the subject, smile and those things, even through the nerves. Smile and kind of work with us and hopefully enjoy it. If not, fake enjoying it, but try and enjoy it. That's the better way of doing it. Okay. So if you remember those questions I just showed you, so we had the questions to assess current knowledge. That was the kind of first group of questions. And we tend to have certain kind of phrases that we start with. So I might say name something, or label it for me. So I'll give you something and label it. Can you list some things for me? So I'll give you an idea, and can you list things? Can you describe them? Can you point to it? Can you define it? Okay. Then the second group of questions were about understanding. So these questions are more likely to start with things like explain or summarize, compare, contrast, demonstrate, show it, okay, prove it to me. And then finally, the kind of really high level ideas are things that test thinking skills. So maybe I'll say, could you design an experiment for me? I don't mean the whole thing. I don't mean, well, I'm going to need £3 million and a load of test tubes. I just mean, well, what would you do? Yeah, how would you make that work? How could you test it? Could you hypothesize what happens next? So if this happens, what do you think might happen next? And then, of course, I'm going to say, well, explain to me why you think that's the case. Develop the idea. So we had that earlier on, but I might say, actually, can you develop that a bit further? Keep going, or critique it. So I've done this experiment. I thought it was brilliant. Didn't get the results I thought I would. Any ideas why? Okay. Justify, suggest, or give evidence. You know, can you think of something else you might have seen that might also evidence this? Okay, so they're all possibilities, but we're going to see these in a second when you invent your questions. Okay, so here's the rules. First of all, yeah, exactly as Ben said, what questions would you ask to allow someone to settle in? So you often kind of say, hi, how you doing? You know, nice journey, lovely weather, all those kind of things, just to get somebody talking. But there might be other things that, you know, sometimes you pick up something from a personal statement. It's, oh, I saw you worked in this lab, or I saw you did this. How did you find it? And it is kind of, as Ben said, like, it's not that we're not interested in the answer, but what we're really trying to do is just get you to talk. And that's the key thing. Just get you to relax. And it happens quickly, I promise you. It happens very quickly. It's like when these webinars start, I get butterflies 20 seconds before, and then I open my mouth and it all goes away, I'm afraid. And that's why I just keep talking at you. Think about encouraging discussion. So what we really want is what we call open questions. Try not to kind of ask a question that's yes, no. So try to do things that will encourage discussion. And then try and ask a range of questions in the context so that people can show their strengths. Okay. So here we go. We're going to do a biological question, and we're going to. So I've done my nice little intro. I've said, you know, or you've said, you know, you've said to me, you know, how you doing? Lovely trip. And I said, yeah, thanks very much. Absolutely lovely to be here. And you said, okay, so I'm going to show you this graph, and it's to do with a biological principle. And what we basically want is, we could think of a whole load of biological principles that actually run to a graph something like this. So I'll go back to that one. But there's a whole load of biological principles we could use. So I've got things like cell development on the left-hand side, top left. We've got things like oxygen binding to hemoglobin, if you've done that before. We've got an epidemic, so kind of virus outbreak or something else. And then the bottom ones are more to do with chemistry. So it's looking at some binding rates of drugs and some action of drugs. So there's lots of places we could go with a relatively simple graph if we wanted to, okay? Or at least simple shape graph. So here we go. We're going to invent our first set of questions, our early questions to test the knowledge. I want to see, or you want to see where I am. You want to see what I understand, because maybe I haven't done this before. I still need to work on it. or maybe I'm a whiz with this kind of thing. So the kind of questions we would use are name, list, label, and describe. So looking at that graph now, and I've got Menti up in front of me again. When you're ready, have another go with the QR code, and what sort of questions could we ask along those lines using those kind of beginnings? Again, nervous wait. Brilliant, through. Yeah, first one, brilliant. Describe the trend of the graph. If the y-axis was mass product formed from an enzyme, list a couple of things the x-axis could be. Superb. Yeah, absolutely. Describe what happens to the rate of change of z. Yeah. Describe how variable B changes as variable A increases. Yeah. Describe the trend shown. Describe a biological process this graph could show. Love that. You know, can you think of applying this to a graph at all? List of possible labels for axes, less X and Y. Yep, absolutely. Describe why the graph plateaus at the end. And of course, you use the term plateau, which that would be great if you were being interviewed. You know, that's called the plateau. Brilliant. What biological processes this graph may show. If it was the rate of reaction, what would be the limitation of it? Yeah, love it. Absolutely. And some of those are maybe even getting a bit advanced. You know, they might be straying into the next level, but I agree. You know, we've got things like, do you know what point X would be called in the graph? Or I might say, what do you think's happening at X, or what's happening at Y? But yeah, love all those. Absolutely brilliant. Great. Okay. So what we're going to do now, there were the answers I just saw, but I wanted to leave the graph up, but you can see your kind of answers in there, hopefully. But absolutely brilliant, and they're all the sorts of things that we would absolutely use. I'd probably start off with the just can you think of some axes for X and Y? I'd try and start off with some things that just encourage discussion, really, and just encourage people to talk, and then we'd start kind of pushing on maybe into some of these other questions, which are really great. Okay, so the ones I came up with, and you're going to see some familiar ones here. Name the terms for the different parts of the graph. Oh, jumped ahead, apologies. Describe the relationship between the X and the Y axis. We could just go for that. Like, you might know the name, you might know what the curve's called, but you might just talk me through the relationship. You know, it starts off slow, goes quickly, then plateaus. Great. Can you describe the relationship in a biological or chemistry situation? Can you think of a way of applying it? And my tip there would be, by all means, come up with something you think is good, but don't show off too much, because you never know what the next question would be. Go for something safe that you think you can go and talk about if you need to. If somebody comes up with some, you know, it's a catalyst of a really weird and wonderful thing, you might regret doing that. So just be, you know, just try and work with us at a kind of this level. Label X and Y. Absolutely great. Okay. That next group of questions, so we're gonna just maybe step it up a notch, and I've got an idea of, or you've got an idea of where I am. You feel like you understand, or I understand the curve, and I can understand what it's applied to. What I might do now is say, actually, we're gonna look at a specific graph that shows shape, and this is it. And what you're going to start thinking about is questions that are going to test that understanding of what's going on in this situation. So we're using terms like explain, summarize, compare, contrast. But if you can think of others you'd like to use, then by all means. But again, Menti's up and running. So what sorts of questions could we use? Here we go. Explain why the graph would be plotted on a log scale. Yeah, great. We've got some mathematicians out there. We could do that. Absolutely. Explain the lag phase at the start. Totally agree. I'd love to do that. So what could be happening at the lag? Why isn't it immediately accelerating? Explain why there's an exponential phase. Agree. Compare the shape of the graph during the lag and exponential phases. Superb. Why the number of cells increases exponentially and then slows. Yeah. And maybe we take it one stage further, and why we suddenly go into a decline or a death phase. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we would go down, that kind of route of making sense of it. It could be, yeah, I mean, the compare side of it, we could say, well, compare the exponential phase to the decline and death phase. What processes could be going on there, do you think, and things like this? Other ones that I've had in the past is simple things. Well, I say simple, but people have said things like, well, explain what you understand from inoculation. Things like that is a really good point. Or just summarize the graph. Just summarize the graph for me. Tell me what you think is going on. But absolutely brilliant. Superb. Or we've got explain why the shape of the graph could change if temperature changes. Yeah, I mean, we're starting to involve now new ideas. So you might be straying on to the next thing, but yeah, absolutely brilliant. Okay, so I'll click on to the next one and we'll do that. So there's your answers, and here were my ideas, just in case nobody spoke to me, but you've been brilliant. Explain what's happening to the population at each stage. Lots of those, which is great. Summarize the mathematical idea, describing the exponential phase. So, you know, if somebody is strong on the maths, I might kind of say, well, do you know what the equation is for the exponential phase, or the whole thing? Compare the stationary and decline phases. Great. Contrast the stationary and decline phases. So compare is, in a way, to some degrees, why they're similar. Contrast is why they might be different. But we'll talk you through it, and we would help you the whole way. Okay. Wonderful. And then if you remember the last one, the last of these three questions were more about the thinking skills. So this is hopefully going to push you a little bit more into the unknowns. And I think, in a way, I feel we've had some of these already, but absolutely great that you're thinking. So we might use explain again, but create, design, hypothesize, critique, which is kind of tell me where you think there might be errors or where there might be things that could be done differently. So again, I've shown you two graphs here, the one we've just seen, but I've added, really crudely, I'm afraid, another curve to it. Or there's the one below, which is actually one of the more chemical, kind of biological things, which is the property of a drug, and then time as the other axis. But again, it's got the same shape. It's got the same shape curve. So again, I would offer it to you guys. What questions are you going to ask me based on these two curves? I don't mind which one it is, but what could we use using those terms? What questions could we ask? Yeah, critique the experiment, the way this data was collected. I agree. You know, it's definitely one of those. So it might be that I just said to you, so this is how we did the experiment. Can you critique it for me? Can you think of where there might be kind of issues? So yeah, hypothesize the factors which cause each curve. Yeah, so I presume, well, we could be looking at either graph there. You know, hypothesize what the changes might be. So in the bottom curve, it could be that these are different drugs, or it could be that they're different enzymes that are working at different temperatures. I don't know, but there's all those kind of ideas. So hypothesize the reason for the change in the effect of the drug. Sorry, I just got that one. Well, I just said that one, but absolutely perfect. Yeah. Design an experiment to measure X variable with the same reaction. Love it. Yeah, we could go down that. Create a graph for a similar experiment. Yeah, I've not thought of that one before, I'll be honest with you, but it's very true. So I've got a similar experiment, but how do you think the graph would be? Design an experiment to identify drugs A, B, C, and D. Yeah, it might be. And it might be that I kind of, we talked about what they were. Let's keep going. Suggest what happened to introduce the new line. Yep, agree. Critique the method and design. Hypothesizes the causes of difference. Yeah, absolutely. That's superb. That's exactly they were exactly the kind of things we would do. We would take it that bit further. In other principles, we could turn around and say, well, maybe we talk about the flow of blood through the heart, and then I could say, well, kind of, what do you think would happen if there was a hole in the heart, or if there was a blockage here, or something else? And could you think of a way that we could design an experiment or something that would test whether that was the case? It's all those things that you build in. Really great. Wonderful. Cool. So the ones I had, just as we come towards the end, hypothesize the cause. I just need to move the thing. Hypothesize the cause of the shift. Design an experiment that might test this hypothesis. Critique the use of the current graph as a model of real-life population shift. So we've done these things, but what might be different in, if you like, real life versus the lab? So if this was a bacterial infection, why might it be different? Excellent. And remember, throughout all of this, I'll go back to that idea. Where you can, use technical language. Doesn't matter if you don't, just describe what it is. But if you do know what it's called, by all means use it. Okay, that's important. We hope you're fluent, link ideas together, problem solve, but we will help you with all these things. Show determination. If you're not sure what's going on, that's okay. Maybe say, look, is there anything you could help me with? Is there anything you can tell me about? Or just start saying, well, look, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this at the moment. And of course, again, show your interest. So they were our questions. What I would say is the finish of the interview, it will be time limits and not progress which define when the interview ends. So we don't extend time. We have our time limits because that's fair. Okay, but there can be progress in all sorts of different areas, but don't worry about that. What we will usually try and do is leave you a bit of time, like I said, to ask any questions about the course or the college. But the really key thing to say is we do need to stick to time, which means often we do give quite clear steers to when the interview is coming to an end. And we're certainly not trying to be rude, but we will try to stick to time, which means we might say, we've come to the end of the interview, lovely to speak to you, but we do need to now move forward. And please don't take that as us trying to obviously get rid of you as quick as possible. It's just we're trying to be fair on everyone and not leave people waiting when they're waiting for their interview. Good. And so I will do my tips and then I will look across to Ben and see if he's got any others he wants to fill in. First tip is please answer the question that we ask you. Sometimes people convert the question into what they want it to be, but sometimes we'll steer them back and just say, okay, but this is what we're asking. Control your nerves rather than hide them. Please listen to our direction because we're often trying to help you. So I know you're thinking, but listen to us as well. Thinking takes time, so you don't have to rush an answer. Okay, it is okay to say, is it right to just take a second and think? That's absolutely fine. But be prepared to explain your answers. We're not looking for yes, no's. All of those questions you've just set me, they're not yes, no's. It's explain, it's thinking, it's describing. So be ready to explain, think and describe, and we'll get along just fine. Ben, I'll look across because I'm sure you've got tips as well.
Yeah, I think we've mostly summed it up, especially, I mean, my big tip was, again, from the start, just think out loud to everything. I just want to touch a little bit more on the please answer the question they ask you. So for things like biology, I'm pretty sure it is a requirement. You have to be doing biology at A level or equivalent to be able to apply for it. Some subjects you don't need to do the same one, so, this is less of an issue. But I feel like for subjects where people are doing the same subject at A level, there can sometimes be a little bit of a tendency to fall back on what you know. And sometimes, that might be good. Sometimes it actually might be related to the question and it might be touching on something purposefully that they think you've seen. Other times you might be trying to put, square pegs in round holes. So, I mean, I know this really happens for psychology as well, where, I ask someone to design an experiment and they, get a little stressed out, a little bit on the spot, and then they just start saying some words they know from psychology. Experimental design. It's like, oh yeah, I learned this is a good way. And they've not actually thought about the question and it wouldn't work in this case. So really, really think about the question, analyze what's in front of you. If they give you a graph, it might be a graph that looks familiar. It might not be the same. So don't go, oh yeah, no, I've seen something like this and just assume you know it. Really take that little bit of time to analyze, think about the things. Because it might touch on something, or it might be something new and you don't want to go, oh yeah, no, I know this, and then be completely wrong. Just really focus on what's there in front of you. And then finally, I think this might have been said before, but it's very important to reiterate anyway. It's okay to go wrong. You will go wrong. It's okay to backtrack. I had to backtrack massively. That exact thing I said where I in psychology, where people just start saying random words, I did that. I was like, oh yeah, well, this is the best way to do experiments, so I'll do this. And then would it work? And I thought about it for 2 seconds and I was like, oh, actually, no, it wouldn't work at all. So I'll have to do something else. It's fine to backtrack. As long don't think once you've said something that they're looking for someone who's really, really stubborn and supports their views and will argue to the ends of the earth. If they're trying to give you a hint that your answer may be wrong, assume it probably is because they know more about the subject than you. And it's fine to say, oh, well, in that case, I'll try something else. And then, just think of something else that might work. It doesn't need to be perfect. doesn't need to be spot on, but just don't be afraid. If you've gone wrong, that's not it. Congratulations. Or no, sorry, the interview's over. And also, if you say something that tends to be right, that's not congratulations, you've got a place. It's very much how you get there. So yeah, don't worry about backtracking.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So this is a summary, and then we go to open questions for us. So really, what to expect is usually 20 to 25 minute interviews. It does vary within subjects, but that's generally it. The idea of the interview is hopefully it's come across, it's an interactive kind of assessment. We're interested in your interests, your aptitude, core skills and technical knowledge, and the capacity to learn with direction and listen to the discussion. So we often do it as kind of problem-based scenarios, discussions, those kind of things. And there are a lot of good resources. So I showed you our video, but there are lots on both universities' websites that go over how to do things. And it's really worth looking at those. If anything, hopefully it does just help settle your nerves and you know what to expect. And I'd also say all of the colleges will be really happy to help you. So if you do have concerns, speak to the college and hopefully they'll allay your fears. So any questions? So again, I'm going to flip on to the last of the Menti slides and I will go here and I can open up to basically say if anyone's got any questions on the application process, then we will do our best to answer them. I can find the QR code again if anyone's.
I think there's one question in the actual
Wonderful.
Zoom Q&A as well of when do Cambridge release invites for interviews by?
Sure. So it will depend on subject. So we will look. So what we try to do, and I say try, we are desperate to do it, but sometimes things go out of control. We try to give people 2 weeks notice as an absolute minimum. So you're really looking at the middle of November usually before it comes out. It might be before then, but it's around that stage. If that seems late notice, I do understand. But what I would say is between the 16th of October, we don't actually get all of the information for the applications until about the 23rd of October. And we then need to get all the data in for any admissions assessments we've done. So actually it usually means us making the decisions over less than 1 week. So you're really probably looking at about the middle of November for things to come out. And I say I apologize for that. I promise we are working as quickly as we can, but it does take a while. Okay, what should we do if we have technical difficulties at home? What I would suggest, and I'll certainly give Ben the chance to answer as well, but what I would suggest is wherever you are doing the interview, have with you the details of the college admissions office for it, so the phone number and the email address. And if you've got problems, the first thing to do is contact them and just saying, I'm having problems. As long as we know, we can work with it.
Yeah, basically the same. So especially with Oxford, because all of them are online. Well, I suppose, yeah, this question only applies to online. You will have someone like the admissions officer at the college would have emailed you a link to the interview beforehand. So you will be in email contact with them. And if it's like a minor thing, like, a couple of times your Wi-Fi drops out for 2 or 3 seconds, that's fine. We can just carry on. If it's something that would properly disrupt the interview, the tutors will probably say, you know what, just email them, we'll reschedule. If you can't even join the call or something like that, just email and say, we've got these issues, and it'll all be sorted out.
What if I can't answer what they ask me? I understand that. I think it's one of those, I mean, it might be that you've not covered it at all. And I think you just kind of say, I haven't covered it. But what I'll often try and do is say, well, tell me what you understand by the term. We'll try and get it back to what you can tell me about. Now, there are times when you just think, okay, I'm going to change tack on this question and I will go into another route, and that does happen. But I think the really key thing to do is, and I know it's not always helpful, but don't panic. Just sit there and think, what can I talk to them about? Because these things do hopefully come to you. So it always feels like empty advice to say don't panic, but I think the thing is, clear your head, just sit there and think, okay, I'm going to talk you through what I do know about this, and hopefully things will come, and we will help you through it as well. Ben, I'd look to you on that one.
Yeah, no, basically the same. I mean, there's two responses to not knowing something. They're saying, sorry, I don't know, which I would argue isn't great. And they're saying, I'm not sure, but I think maybe a good place to start would be, or just think of like, is there anything about this question that you know? And then just say that. And then from that can be a jumping off point, and the tutors. So try to avoid just saying, yeah, I don't know any of this. And just try to think, is there anything here I do know? Can I use that? I'll also just say there's a fair few questions in the Zoom Q&A. I'm not sure if we'll get time to reading all of these answers.
Sure, I'll try and
them all out loud. So I'll just type some answers to the Q&A as well. So if you've put a question in there and we don't answer it, just check there.
Sure. So I'll try and go through some quickly, not like hopefully kind of usefully. Are we judged on the question we're asked at the end? Absolutely not. No, not. It's really just your opportunity to get the answers you need. So no, absolutely not. My school hasn't been able to confirm that they can provide a stylus for the interactive whiteboard. Is this a problem? So I know what we do at Selwyn with this, which is basically we turn around and say, have pen and paper next to you, so that if the technology doesn't work, you draw it on a piece of paper and you show it to the camera. I'm a big fan of the most basic thing is the best thing. What I would say is that you should, if you speak to the college that you've applied to, they will give you direction, because different people do different things. But that would be my suggestion anyway, to have some paper next to you so that you can do that. Is it okay to take a minute to think about the question? Not only is it okay, I would say that it is thoroughly advised. I think it's a good idea that you just, even if you know the answer, just give yourself a second, think it through. Thoroughly advised. How in depth is the question about your personal statement? There might be some, but there might not. How in depth? It varies. Sometimes it does depend on the subject, and possibly less so in biological sciences than some other things. But if somebody said they've read a book, you might ask them a little bit about it. And I don't expect them to say, well, on page 30 it said this, and quote it back. But I would expect them to have a grasp about what the book was about. Same thing if they say, so in my vet and medicine career, you have people that say the most life-changing thing I ever saw was I saw an operation on a dog. And you go, brilliant, tell me about it. And they say, I have no idea what happened. And you think, if this was really so life-changing, you'd have a bit of a recall. So it really is just being familiar with it. If you don't really have an idea on the question, how would you, so we've kind of looked at that. Have I just managed to get that screen off? Yeah, sorry, I've just managed to do that. Let me screen share again. Apologies. Accidentally. There we go. Are we back? I think we're back. Yeah, technical issue. Does the 2 or 3 interviews have a different focus or topic? Yeah, they often will. And yes, they would be conducted by different people. So you'll have maybe 2 people in the first, and they will have certain areas of expertise and interest. And then you'll have a different 2 people in the second one that will have different areas. It's where, if you like, I hope it's seen as a positive, because it might be that you are interviewed on one subject that maybe isn't your area, but you may well be interviewed by another person in another subject where that really is your thing. And obviously we do talk, but the most important thing is you say, yeah, but if they go down this route of the subject, then they are very good at that. So it's there to make sure that we are asking diverse questions. From Bionatsky, will the interviews be on biology, chemistry and maths? It will be along those lines, yeah. But they'll probably be a bit amalgamated. So you won't necessarily go, oh, this is my biology question. You might get a bit of things in there, and then we might throw in a calculation or something to work through. I may have missed any others, but Ben, are there any other? Oh, I've done it again. Are there any other?
There's one that is definitely more for you. So how do interviews differ for biological, natural science applicants who have not taken biology A level?
For subjects that you might not have done within the sciences, I mean, I think the first thing to kind of question is it really biological natural sciences you want to do, and maybe not physical natural sciences, or what we call PBS, but psychology or something else? So just make sure it is the right thing, because obviously there is a bit of a clue in the name that it's biological natural sciences. But if you are tested on a science that you don't have, again, what I would say is go back to first principles, see what you could work through. We might ask the same questions, but obviously that gauging of your initial knowledge, we will get the idea that that's not really your area. So we might be looking for less fact-based, but we might just be looking for you to apply what knowledge you have in novel situations. But I think the really key thing is, obviously there would be an expectation in a biological natural sciences interview to, I mean, really biology is something that is underpinning what you're going for.
Cool. And then, yeah, there's a couple I'll get to here. So one, how are people shortlisted for interview? Again, this is like holistically, there's lots of things we take into account. It's basically all of the information we have up until that point. But one difference I do want to point out, because I think it's somewhat important, Oxford, we tend to be quite a bit harsher on who we invite to interview. We interview less people, but then once you've been interviewed, a higher percentage of people who are interviewed get places. Whereas Cambridge tend to interview more people, but then are harsher after the interviews. So the numbers work out. There's no advantage. There's not one that's riskier or easier than the other. There's just, that slightly harsher boundary is a different stage for Oxford and Cambridge. Beth has asked, what is a good place to find questions to practice answering? Amazing question. So any websites, any YouTube videos that have been published by official Oxford or Cambridge places, or Oxford and Cambridge tutors, please, for the love of God, don't go to just ones where anyone can upload it. And at least, please do not go on the student room. They're normally ridiculous. They're normally massively out of context. And at the very start, I said it's not a job interview. We don't say describe yourself in 60 seconds. I once typed in Oxford interview questions and found myself on oxfordinterviewquestions.com, where they said one of the questions they might ask is to describe yourself in 60 seconds. And I can guarantee you that tutors do not care in the slightest how you would describe yourself in 60 seconds. They care what you have to say about the subject. And then again, just one for you. I think I might be able to say a little bit those. So even if my personal statement's geared towards biology, and if I am asked, I tell them I want to choose all biology modules, will I still be asked about chemistry? You probably would with natural sciences as well, and also just because, bits of chemistry will crop up in biology, but do you just want to expand on that a little bit more?
And yeah, no, I agree. It's we understand, but in a way, the advantage of biological natural sciences here, or in theory physical natural sciences, is that in the first year you do a range of different science subjects. So the really important thing is that some people have their ideas that they want to go into, and that's absolutely fine. But underneath it all, we are looking for all-round scientists that can at least hold their own a bit in there. So yeah, you're still going to get the range of questions, but it usually becomes apparent what we think people are going to go into. But it probably comes down to that thing of, if you like, choosing the right university and the right course, because the advantage of biological natural sciences is starting a very diverse course. And if that wasn't really what was required, then there are straight biology courses in other places that is. It's certainly not to put you off, but that's how we see the subject. So I was just thinking what the question before, there was something I was going to say, but things have got in the way. Do you remember, the question before, Ben?
Oh God, short-term memory.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Doesn't matter if not. No, don't matter.
Yes.
It's me.
Yeah.
I had it in my head.
I can look
It went. Any others? Anything else we can help with?
Oh, it was about a good place to find practice questions.
Yeah, sorry, that was it. One of the things I find really useful is just if teachers, loved one, guardians, whoever it is, if you make a statement, get them to ask you why, explain, just get that practice in. So if you say to somebody, "Oh, it works like this," go, "Tell me how, tell me why." Get everyone interviewing you is the terrifying thing.
And then I think the final question before we call it quits, will each interview be focused on the interviewer's field of expertise? I think for Oxford, it might be slightly geared towards their area of expertise, but I don't think it's a massive thing. And certainly lots of people think that you can get an advantage in the interviews by stalking your LinkedIn or the websites for the tutors at the college you apply to. And I don't think that's the case.
No. No, I think not. It might be a bit of an indication. I'm afraid we can be jack of all trades, and you won't know what's coming from me. Well, I don't think you will. It's that kind of thing. No, but it's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. For at least you to know.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think we've gone over time, which I apologise for, but hopefully it's been helpful.
Yes. Yeah. The very final thing, I promise this last one. Someone said, "Is it okay for me to have a specific area I like within biology, genetics, for example, but still do the whole of biology?" Yes, absolutely fine. They're not going to hold you against that. They'll probably think it's quite interesting and might ask you why you like that area. Cool. So that's the very quick final answer there. So it's 8 o'clock on a Friday evening. So thanks very much for sticking along. We'll call it there. If you have any more questions, you can email us. You can go on our college websites and you can provide us. And I think there is also an exit survey when we close this. So if anyone could fill that out, that would be superb. But thanks very much to Stuart. He's been the main mastermind behind this. It was fantastic. And I think you guys all did really well, gave some really fantastic points and asked some incredible questions. So good luck all. Thanks for coming along. And I think we'll call it there.
Yeah. Good luck, everyone. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Cheers, Ben. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Norris. See you later.